Well,
Well,
it's great to see you, Kane. I was just saying, awesome that you joined us. I wouldn't have, so this may be a bad PR move for you, but you're here nonetheless, and you can't leave.
That's it.
Uh, yeah,
I'm
Kane,
committed.
you're kind of. I was thinking about you the other day, and like in my mind, you're kind of the honorary CEO of Coworking, and you've been at this for I think it was since 2012. You started IQ offices
That's
back
correct.
when it
Yep.
was called IQ Office Suites, and you're the CEO of IQ.
Mhm.
You're the past president of the GWA. That you're the current president of LExC, the
Mhm.
general CEO of Coworking. You're just a passionate individual about the industry, and you're one of the most generous people I know in terms of sharing your knowledge. You're an open book. You're trying to move the industry forward. I don't know, like if big Coworking is paying you or not, but you're definitely doing a great job. And I can tell you're intrinsically motivated by it, and you show up at all the events, and you're just such a great contributor. So we just thought, if we could get you to, if we could somehow trigger you to come on the show, we'd love to have you. And here you are today. You're also a biathlon runner, competitor.
triathlon, we talked about that. Come on.
Triathlon. No, a
I briefed you
triathlon.
before
Sorry,
I briefed you before
I'm
this. Come
like,
on.
you're a
Specifically an Ironman athlete, which is like particularly important to note.
It's a new level. Yeah. And Taylor is a legend in his own right in some of these spaces. And you started doing that in your 40s, and now you place in top placement. And I think you're entering your 50s. You're in your low 50s now. But what's your highest ranking in your age category, if you're willing to divulge?
Yeah. I mean, I started when I was 49, so that still counts as 40s.
Yes, it
I'm
does.
54 now, so that counts as low 50s. So,
Yep.
so I think that puts me squarely in the brackets that you put me in, which is great. Just before I start on the whole Ironman journey, first of all, thank you for all those kind words. That was very kind.
True.
And very nice. And in terms of the podcast, I love listening to the podcast that you have both put together. It is fantastic. It's really good. It
Thank
dives
you.
deep into some insights with regards to marketing, which always seems to be that black box that everybody's trying to figure out. So, I appreciate that you put it all together.
Oh, well,
Appreciate it.
we're
Thanks for
still trying to figure
listening.
out the black box. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you listen too. Yeah, it's great. You're the one.
Yeah, I'm another one of the listeners, right? You always talk about how many listeners, or I'm on that list.
One of six. One of six.
Yeah.
Love it.
Well, yeah. So we just decided, you'd be a perfect person to bring on. We also want to bring on one of your team members as well, and I've been trying to coordinate a time on that. But so we just thought we go way back. I always say I'm responsible for Taylor, bringing him into this industry, and you're kind of responsible for me in a way, Kane, because we met back in I think 2014, and I was helping you with your website, and you had 2 locations, going on 3, and then you got to 5, and now what number of locations are you at now?
We have 8.
8 now. Okay. Are you still expanding? Obviously, I think you are.
We are still expanding. Yeah, we're opening up a new floor in Vancouver, which we're under construction on right now. We actually just got our permits last week, so we're starting demolition hopefully this week, and then we've got some other stuff in the hopper in terms of growth. So things are busy on that side. We're looking at expanding, growing larger in the markets that we're already in Canada, and then also looking at potentially expanding to other markets, cautiously, but looking at expanding to other markets as well.
Yeah, and I'm disappointed you're not
big...
expanding to my market, but we will leave that one aside for now. What were you gonna say, Taylor?
I was going to say the Vancouver office here, and I'm not just being biased, but I did work there for probably a year, and that is probably the best space in the city here. Like the view that you get at that location in Vancouver is incredible. Like ocean, mountains, like are really hard to beat. It's on a high enough city, mountain, oceans. You're on a high enough floor that you're not really blocked by the buildings behind it, and you get like it's a real Vancouver experience working in that office. It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And so we have the 21st floor, which is the floor you were on. We have the 24th floor, and now we're taking on the 25th floor. And every time you go up a floor, that's going up 12 feet or how much it is. And it really does make a difference in terms of you just get a little bit higher, get a little bit better view of English Bay, or, over top of that building that you're looking at. And so we find in Vancouver, view definitely matters, right? Location first, then view. So we're proud of that location. It's done well, and now we're adding another floor, which is great.
It's awesome. And also just on a personal note too, as somebody who has struggled through my share of half Ironmans, I never got through the full one, but to be able to train for that many Ironmans at that high of a level while still doing all the other multitude of things that you do is insane. For anybody who hasn't considered Ironman, it's probably like 20 to 25 to 30 hours a week of training if you're really like you're stuck into it?
Yeah, it's a lot. Like so all of your weekends are gone. So you have to just
Gone.
figure that, yeah, gone. So you have usually you're training on Saturdays and Sundays. Saturday or Sunday will usually be your long day. You're going to be doing 6 to 8 hours of training that day, which is a lot in itself. And you can wake up early. Like you can get up at 5 and start that. If you're training off season, you got to do it inside, which is absolute torture. But if
The
you're
bike
sitting on
trainer.
a bike, yeah, if you're on the trainer for 6 hours as an
Miserable.
example, you can start that at 5. And then the math sounds good. It's like, okay, well, wait a second. If I'm on at 5 a.m., right, I'm going to get off around 1, somewhere in that neighborhood, 1, 2 sort of thing. And then I'll have the rest of the day. The problem is you're cooked. So you can't
Yeah.
do anything. So
Because that's like you're putting like 5,000 calories before lunch. And then you want to try and continue your day while your brain's like absolutely depleted.
Totally. Yeah. So it just becomes all encompassing, right? So you're just so
Yeah.
tired. You spend all your time in recovery or training, right? Or working, right? You really have to prioritize. I found just getting up earlier was the way that I stayed on track in terms of discipline for doing the
Yeah.
workouts. I did find that my sleep sometimes you're trying to thread that needle of I need good sleep for good recovery, but I need to wake up early if I'm going to get that swim plus the run in that day. So,
Yeah.
you're just trying to balance that. And in the midst of that, of course, you got life going on and you got to do all the other life things as well.
Yeah.
But I will say that I've done 2 fulls,
Yeah.
9 halves. It was a journey doing the first one and getting to that
Yeah.
level of fitness. But once you get to a certain level of fitness, your body starts to adapt and you can do a little bit more. Like still fulls are big for me. So like a half is a
Yeah.
real kind of sweet spot. But a full is really hard and it's really difficult to train to get to your body to the point where it acclimates to 6, 7 hours of training to the point where it's like you can get off that and just be like, okay, cool. Now let's go. I don't know, Costco, whatever it is that you want to do
Just
for the rest of
continue
that
on
day,
with your
right?
life.
Exactly.
It is
And
funny,
not just
like,
spreading it on a bed somewhere.
well, it is funny. And like, I was nowhere near at your level for sure, but I did like my last half that I did was in Calgary and I signed up with a couple of friends and I'd convinced them to do their first. And I've been training like 6 years nonstop at that point. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I don't want to do this to myself anymore. And I took like 3 or 4 months off of the training. And then like 4 weeks out, I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to go ahead and do this thing. And I trained for like a couple of weeks and did my taper. And then I actually hit a PR in the race. So what you're talking about, where
Oh,
you're like,
amazing.
you climb that hill and then you get there and then like your fitness is enough that you can actually sustain it for like months afterwards. I mean, the full is different, but it is true. Like you kind of climb the hill and then you get to that point that you can hold on to it for a bit. And now I can't run 5K anymore. So that definitely went away, but it sticks
Yeah,
around for a while.
it does stick around for a little bit, but it takes longer to build it than it does to tear it down, right? As with everything in life.
Yeah,
So
does
you
it
gotta
ever?
you gotta be diligent in building it, but then you have to be somewhat diligent in maintaining it as well, right? And not just completely
Yeah.
falling off the wagon in the off season. Last year I just went way too big. I did a marathon in April in Boston, and then I did half in Muskoka, which is around where I live in Toronto, and then I did a full. I did World Championships. I did of the half, and then I did uh, Chicago for another marathon. So I did the 2 marathon, and it all seemed like a good idea because I went on that whole theory of, hey, I'm already got the fitness, so like I could just ride that out through all these races, and it did not work. So what ended up happening is I got injured. I slowed down. I started really fatiguing mentally on training, because to
Yeah.
try and stay in race shape that long and keep that intensity going, especially when you're trying to like build speed. So you're doing those intense workouts as well.
Yeah.
And then you get a
Yeah.
little bit injured. And then, so it just shows you like, it's more important.
Compounds.
Yeah. It just shows you it's so much more important to be consistent and on a linear and look at your progression on somewhat of a linear basis. Never goes linear, but to the perspective of like, do what you're capable of doing to the best of your ability. I think that's a better way to look at it than like, I feel like I'm fit now, so let's just do everything, right? Because
Yeah.
I want to do it all, right? And I think that was a learning for me because I've got a couple of injuries I'm nursing through now. I feel like I'm losing fitness, and all of that is because I just took too much on last year. So now I'm trying.
That's a
Now
pretty
I'm cycling back into it.
It's a pretty incredible resume, no matter how you cut it. And I feel like there's lessons from what we were just talking about that apply in life and business as well as in triathlon, right? I think I think a lot of those things kind of like there's some parallels there. in racing
Yeah.
and in work and in life and all that stuff.
Y- Yeah. I mean, looking at surrounding yourself with the right people, I find when you go to these events, most of the
Yeah.
people are highly accomplished that run Ironmans and it's because they've obviously have discipline in their life. And so in order to have that, even if you have time, doesn't mean you have discipline. So even if you say, oh yeah, well, they're retired, so they could do it. You still need discipline regardless of how much time you have. You still have to prioritize it. You still got to wake up in the morning when you don't and do the things you don't want to do and do the hard things over
Yeah.
and over again. So those people tend to also have a lot of accomplishments in other areas of their life. And so you meet a really interesting group of people.
Yeah. The community there is incredible for sure.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
so, yeah, I know you're not running a business or anything, so you have all this time to just run marathons marathons? No,
Yeah,
triathlons.
yeah.
Triathlons.
Triathlons. And so,
Marathons
yeah,
too. You're right. I threw
technically,
those two in.
There-
okay,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
a few of
yeah.
those.
there's a marathon in every Ironman you run. So
That's
yeah.
right. It's true. Yeah, for sure. The
Incredible.
most painful part.
But
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
amazing
yeah.
though that you're able to do this, and you've always been like just a natural, like high energy, just pour yourself into things, and a great leader, and just you're kind of naturally engaged with life. So it's great to see. But yeah, all kidding aside, you do have a very hard job, and I know you're busy. So I want to kind of, while I have you, kind of dive into some of your expertise here with IQ, and I guess your bread and butter client is an enterprise client. You have professional services in there. You have funded startups and organizations. Um, but but you've kind of picked a category within the flexible office and co-working industry that's different than a traditional co-working operator. And can you tell us how has that kind of impacted your marketing, because that's sort of the focus of this, but also your product and just your
Yeah.
decision making overall? Did you always have that clarity on who you wanted to serve? I know a little bit about your background thought process, but yeah, like
Mhm.
how has that impacted your everything you do?
Well, it came down with understanding who the customer was first to really dig in. And I had the benefit of AI to really help me on that because we have a fairly sizable portfolio, 270,000 square feet across 8 locations across the country. And one of the big challenges I found pre AI was the ability to aggregate information, useful information in the way that you want to see it. And you get information out of HubSpot or Salesforce or Cube or Office R&D, but it's very templated to what they think you want to see. And for me, one of the big advancements of AI that we've been using so far in our organization is to take that information and really tailor it down to what it is that you are wanting to learn, right? And then act upon. So what we did is we looked at all of our membership of private offices and we did a deep dive on those companies to understand if those companies were owned by other larger companies. So instead of just understanding the profile of that company, is that company owned by a much larger company? And if that much large, if they are, what is the profile of that company? And then from there, understand who's making the decision, how decisions are being made, who is our customer. So what we found out of that was 82% of our desks were occupied by enterprise companies. And we have 3 different categories of enterprise companies. It ultimately means that they have approximately 1,000 employees and they have an international footprint. So there's 3 different categories: large, unicorns, that sort of thing, that go within that we can also specify because there's different considerations, public, private, and those things.
Mhm.
But that was a big finding. And then we looked at the 18%. And so what we found was that less than 3% of our inventory was actual startups, which is what everybody thinks. Even my dad was talking to me about this. He goes, "Oh yeah, you really handle all those startup companies and all that." And I'm like, "No, Dad, we don't. No, we do different stuff, right?" So I'm not communicating well with my father, but when we started to look at these different areas of like these different categories of customers, we started to look at who's making the decision, what are their primary drivers, why are they picking us over the competition, what should we be doubling down on in terms of our investment within the organization. So in looking at those companies, what we found was that many times the decision maker was offsite, even though the influencer may be on site. So the influencer may be in Vancouver, who's the one picking the office, but ultimately that person is putting together a survey and of all the different locations, many times a broker is involved, and that goes up to someone somewhere else that is ultimately making the decision, right? It's at very least a collaboration. Usually the person on like we find at the location level, even if they have a budget, they're still collaborating with someone else at head office. So that changes where you go fishing for the prospects, right? So we spent quite a bit of money on pay-per-click and being, social media, follow me campaigns, all those sort of things. And what we found was that the majority, not the majority, but a big chunk of that, of the leads that would come in from that initiative were the small companies and the startups and the ones that wanted 1 and 2 and 3 person offices. And so if you look at the distribution of the different companies that were coming in through that channel, you were seeing a big bulge at the bottom, 1, 2, 3 hot desks, right? And then it was getting less and less and less as you were getting to the larger offices, which is more of what we have within our portfolio. So if you look at our portfolio, our average size office is 8 people. So that's actually quite large considering how many offices we have in our portfolio. If you look at many other operators that I've talked to, they seem to be more in the like 2.5 to 3 person range if you look at their average office size. So because of that, we have to think differently about who our customer is, and then how we speak to that customer, and then also how do we allocate our finite resources that we have towards marketing. And what we've determined is that the majority of our leads come in through brokers, number one. Number two, when they come in through brokers, they have a higher probability of closing because they're more qualified usually when they come in through brokers, number two. And then number three, if we look at where we're putting our marketing dollars and allocating our spend, if we look at what we're spending on pay-per-click and the follow me campaigns and all the things on that side, if we were to take that entire thing, 100% of it, and put it just towards the brokers, that's a significant budget that you're putting towards the brokers that are all known. The great thing about the brokerage community is that I know how many brokers there are. I know who they are. We do. We know who they are. We know how many in each market. We know we know a lot of their drivers, what motivates them to deal with us, what they like about dealing with us, what they don't like about dealing with us and the industry in whole. So we can, it's a great realization from our perspective because it's a really easy customer to go and find because they're right there in front of you. You can even call a brokerage, any brokerage. It's one of the few businesses where I think you can do this and say to the front desk, can you send me a list of all your brokers and their email addresses? And they're like, sure. Here, what's your email address? Right? Like there's no other industry that would ever do that. Right? But brokers do that, which is amazing. So instead of trying to be in the place online where the person that you don't know might be looking, we're able to go and leverage the brokerage community because the brokers also have a tremendous amount of leverage because when we have a relationship with one broker, we're getting access to, call it 50 to 100 tenants as a result of that because we're leveraging all of their relationships. So that's been a realization from our perspective that has been really eye-opening. And we've taken that data and we've actioned it. So we've pulled spend away from our pay-per-click and our online marketing, and we have put it towards the brokerage community. And we're seeing some great results. So we're right now tracking year-over-year leads, and we've got a significant amount more leads from the brokerage community this year, month over month, than we did last year. So we're already seeing a huge uptick. I should also say too that it's not a one-prong approach. We also have Lisa, who is Lisa Henderson. She is our director of business development. She full-time is out there in front of the brokerage community and drawing leads out of the brokerage community. So that's another initiative in addition to what you might call passive spend. It's not really passive because you have to think about the campaigns and how they work and that sort of thing. But in terms of like single to mass, in terms of like looking at what you're doing on different platforms, email and newsletters and LinkedIn and all those things and social media in terms of getting in front of the brokers, but you're really looking at, you put something in place and you blast it out to them. Whereas with Lisa and that department business development, that is all about outreach, which is something that we really didn't do outreach, like proper outreach in a really organized way for the first decade of our business. It literally, we waited for the phone to ring and we did a lot of things to try and make the phone ring, but we did just wait for the phone ring in many ways. And most of the time we found that our on-site people were just too busy to do the outreach, and certainly in a consistent way. When things would die down and be like, okay, all right, we call it RAMs, regional area managers, do our sales. Regional area managers, time to do your 10 phone calls to the brokers, check in, see how they're doing, but then you go through a busy time and they'd be like, I can't even keep up with my agreements, never mind calling a broker, right? To, just to chat. So So we decided to make that very intentional for us going out after those brokers, move spend over there, have Lisa and the business development team, focusing specifically on the outreach, and we've seen some real results out of that. And we're building our book of those enterprise customers. Because we also find this is a total word salad I am going on, but I'll stop.
That's
I'll take
great.
a breath in a minute.
No, keep going.
So, um, so, so I find as well when we get these customers, we get the master service agreement with them. It's highly probable that we are going to see them in multiple markets. So most of our big organizations that we have within our portfolio have utilized another location. They will utilize they will sign an agreement in 2 locations, 3 locations, 4 locations. We become their de facto solution for Canada. So if they're going to another Canadian market that we're in, we get them, which is amazing. And it's part of the when you look at the return, the cost of customer acquisition, it's big, right? Because you're getting these groups, you're getting them for a long period of time. They tend to be more stable. And then beyond that, you just realize these residual benefits because they go to other markets. In addition to that, they need tons of customization. They need space and data racks. They want custom furniture within their space. We've ordered custom furniture to fit specifically for a unit for a large enterprise company, and all of that. Take down a wall, move this, move that. They want all these things, and they have budget for it, so they can pay for it. So it becomes this like additional revenue that we call it, is a big chunk of our revenue now. That was something that was really non-existent 7 years ago.
I love that you're taking first the customer first approach, knowing your customer, and then figuring out where do the decisions get made, and then figuring out how brokers are a big part of your thing, and then changing your marketing spend and your efforts. It's really reallocating away from Google. I assume it's a much smaller percentage of your budget than it maybe has been previous to that. And so really just doubling down on what the facts are telling you, which is sometimes hard to do because it's counterintuitive a little bit, right? Like it's like, why would we be spending money on all these leads when our customers typically come from brokers? And I call that the golden goose strategy. So instead of looking for the golden eggs, look for the golden geese that lay the golden eggs. So look for the people that have the customers, if that's the the thing they go through. So I love that you've doubled down on that. And so you have a dedicated person to do this biz dev, relationship driven stuff. Are there any other things you've done that have worked successfully for you with brokers in terms of incentivizing them or just breaking through the ice? I know you did some education work, but any other things that are kind of working to really solidify your partnership with brokers?
Yeah, one of the things that I get a lot of in terms of questions from the co-working community is how do you break into the brokers, and they find in their markets they have a challenge getting the brokers to pay attention. And the reality is I have that same challenge. It is challenging because the brokers community, much like the real estate community, just moves at like a glacial pace in terms of like innovation and the way that they do things and the different products. And it's just built into that industry. It just moves very slowly because there's a lot of decisions that are made. There's long-term commitments that happen. So things just things just move slower. From a broker perspective, what they look at is what they try to do, and they do it in a way that is not only self-interested. I think it'd be wrong to generalize and say brokers are only going to do what's in their best interest. There are many brokers out there that are very consultative and very much long-term thinkers, and they're looking at what they can do right for their customer. But the reality is, when you look at how they're paid, they get paid for bigger, longer. That's how they get paid. They get paid more if it's bigger. They get paid more if it goes longer. So that's how they're paid, and which makes sense because that's ultimately what the landlords want. The landlords want bigger and longer. They want bigger spaces, longer leases. So because of that, success in that industry has always centered around bigger, longer. Right. And so when you start to talk to them about smaller, shorter, they're like, wait a second, this is completely the opposite of what I've been told by my mentor that I need to do. I need to go and secure a 10,000 footer for 15 years or a 20,000 footer for 15 years. They're not, when they're coming into the industry, and maybe this will change in the fullness of time, they're not being told, hey, you should try and do a bunch of small deals, as many small deals as you can. Like that's not a recipe for success. In fact, and in the past, that was the case, because what would happen is it would take just as much work for a 1,000 square footer as it would for a 10,000 square footer. All the same dynamics of that deal are exactly the same. It's complicated. There's emotion involved. There's tons of paperwork. The deal dies once or twice before it moves past that stage, and sometimes it doesn't. And then you get to the deal, and then you've got a fixturing period, and you've got free rent, and the landlord pays in different ways, and it's just so complicated. And to move that into and this is what I'm talking to like managing directors about at different brokerage houses. And I had a discussion with a managing director at one of the brokerages a couple of weeks ago when I was in Vancouver, and saying, like, for your young guys, let's just start there. Like, let's try and win some battles, right? For your young guys that are new coming into the business, you have massive turnover. I know that because I was a broker for many years and I've just seen it. You have massive turnover. People come in within 6 months, they're out, sometimes less, right? And then maybe within a year, then they cut again, cut. So for those ones that are coming in, if you want to give them the highest opportunity for success, why don't you get them to do co-working deals? Because they can do the deal in the fraction of the time. They make as much money as they make on a 3.5-year deal. You take out that the deal dies every like twice before it gets done. You remove the complexity from the deal. But most importantly, now they build a book because they go out, they do the deal. A month later, the deal's done. They get the next customer. They put them in a co-work space. Deal done, deal done, deal done, deal done. I said to the managing broker, like, or managing director, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a guy that came in or a gal that came in and did 3 deals that were around, let's say, 5,000 square feet? Or would you rather have them done 10 to 15 deals that are anywhere between 5 and 25 person offices in a co-working space? Because those deals are a dividend. They will pay. That co-working space will pay like over and over and over again because you automatically get paid on renewals, right? But more importantly, you've now built your book. So now if one of those 15 deals that you did goes through the roof and they need a 20,000 square foot space, guess what? Like that's going to launch the career of that young person who's coming into the brokerage, right? So instead of them spending all this time and trying to get a deal done in these long gestation periods for these transactions in a traditional lease, like, shorten it. And I'm speaking to the choir because I know you guys agree with me, but I will tell you that that's something difficult because they're just not used to. They have their sales meetings, they bang on the table. They're not used to banging the table for a 10-person office at a co-working space. They're like, But these are the things where I think for certainly the younger brokers that are coming in, this should be celebrated. They should celebrate not only like how much have you brought in commission, but also like how much of your book have you built? How many relationships have you established? And because those relationships ultimately are what is going to build your career in the future. And if you spend less time doing the deal and more time managing the relationships and going out and finding more deals, it's just obvious to me that would be a recipe for success.
So you don't have to share this in detail, but do you offer more compelling incentive structures for those renewals? Because it seems like there's a bit of a conflict of interest. Because on the one hand, me, the buyer, and I'm actually about to sign a traditional lease myself, so I'm in this situation. But I want the shortest commitment I can with as much optionality after a couple of years, or whatever. And the broker kind of wants the longer term because that's where they get paid. And then there's this idea of renewals, and I think there's probably a lesser commission for renewals. But do you have a unique structure, or is it fairly competitive with the market? With what the market is offering? And again, you don't have to get into all those details, but just at a high level, like obviously you've thought this thing through because you're thinking about the incentives. But is there something unique that you do, or is it basically we're trying to be really competitive and really generous, or what's your approach?
We try to be really easy to do business with and pay quickly. That's always our goal.
Okay.
And so we pay 10 and 2, just like most do. That's 10 and 2 seems to be the way that most companies do it as a baseline. And then
So
people
10%
change
first commitment years, 2% renewals.
10% for the first 12 months, and then
Okay.
2% for everything past that. And you're always paid up front on whatever the committed term is.
Got it.
So, but there's a nuance to that, because if someone comes into your space and they take a 5-person office and then they decide they're going to move from a 5-person office into a 10-person office, that the delta resets to another 12 months on that delta. So if they grow so if they take a $10,000 office and then they say, let's say 10 to 15, that's going to make our math easy. So let's say it's a $10,000 office. They go to a 15 person office, and let's call it $1,000 a desk. Again, easy math. So you're at 15,000. So the 10,000 would be 10% for the first 12 months, and then it would go to 2%. But the $5,000 delta, the difference between 10 and 15, would start again at 12% and then run out, right? And it wouldn't go drop down to the 2% until you get past the 12 months.
Got it.
This is very confusing It
Hmm.
is like operationalizing it is a total pain in the ass. Like we have a bot that does it, and we have a spreadsheet that does it, and it's confusing to the broker, and that's a challenge, and that's something that I wish I could solve for the industry. But these are the kind of things that when the broker when you they get a request for invoice from us to say, hey, this person just expanded, send us for 12 months, send us an invoice. Like, this is free money somewhat, right? Yeah, they worked
Hmm.
for it, but yeah, this
Yeah,
money is coming in unexpected. And then on the all of the renewals, same thing. We send them a request for invoice every quarter. We usually have people in term. We don't do month to month for the most part. So most of the time, when they get to the end of their 1 year, they're signing for another 1 year term. So we can send a request for invoice for that entire amount. So we try to really invest in building the systems and the communication structure so that brokers think, hey, I want to bring someone to them because they're really easy to do business with. Number one, and number two, I get paid fast. And sometimes I get this like nice little bonus in the mail or email where they're asking me to send them an invoice for money. That's also good. So we
yeah,
really try to focus around those things as opposed to just paying more. Paying
yeah,
more is no different than discounting. You're just racing to the bottom. Like, so
yeah.
I'm not interested in just in paying more. I think there's more value in us paying on time and being really easy to work with. I think that's what really comes down to. And then they see the value. They see the value in working with us, even if another competitor might be paying 5% on renewals or 10% or whatever the number would be, right? If we're easier to do the deals with, I think we'll still get the deals at the end of the
I
day.
love it. I'm going to ask you one more
Yeah.
question before we let Taylor take over the interrogation here. But I love that
All
you're
right.
building a reputation for yourself in the brokerage community because that matters a lot, right? Like the idea of having to chase you for money. Or I don't even know if you're going to pay me on year two or whatever, versus they're just super broker friendly. I think that's a you just that association takes years to build up and can benefit you for many years, and it becomes a moat, I think, as part of your brand for that market, which is huge. So my next question, and then we're going to pass it over to Taylor. You have these sites like LoopNet, right, where you can go on there and I can search, and I know brokers are using various platforms to find inventory for their clients, and I know you're on probably lots of them, if not all of them. What are your thoughts? And this is a philosophical question about taking the individual units that you have for sale, maybe not all of them, and putting them on your website and to begin to kind of break it down, make it more user friendly. And people can effectively do that with the square footage and the line items and the offices you have. And I don't know if you put all of them available or you just say like, here's some of them, reach out for more. But what are your thoughts on this idea of moving more toward giving more inventory, making it more consumer friendly on your own website? Is that something you're doing, or is it kind of even like here's a few offices and then reach out for the full inventory? But generally speaking, do you want just pure consultation? Like, I'm not going to tell you anything about what we have except what's on LoopNet. Contact us for more info, or do you find yourself leaning more in that direction that we work headed in, where you're starting to what I call merchandise or individualize your units and put them on the internet, specifically on your website? What are your thoughts on that? If that question makes sense to you?
Yeah, it does make sense. So I've been looking at that for a very long time. I like the idea of putting the inventory on the website because it allows the consumer to qualify their interests with the information while they're already there and in buying mode, right? So if it's to our benefit, it's great because they're going to make a decision and maybe they decide to go with us and they decide to send us a note as a result of that, which they wouldn't have otherwise, right? Because
Hmm.
they can't see what's there. It has the downside of they come in, they look at something, they don't understand what all the benefits are. They just look at it and say, "Well, that's because
Expensive per square
then
foot.
it's
Yeah.
expensive per square foot, or it's or another competitor is charging me much less." They could say something like that because the competitor doesn't have all their hidden fees on there, whereas mine's all inclusive. So I think there's a bit of a challenge in the market because there isn't a standardization on how companies charge for the product, and because of that, it can be very confusing to the consumer. That wouldn't stop me from putting it on the website because I think there's still more benefit because I think there's a lot of eyes on our website that could go in and qualify. I would like it even more so for the brokers than actually for the end customer because most of the time I'm dealing with the brokers, I'm not dealing with the end customer. So, and the times we're dealing with the end customer, because it's such a small component of our portfolio, it kind of just happens like that's it's such a small piece that we get those companies, they somehow find us and that sort of thing, right? So, my feeling on it though, in general, is that you want the opportunity to speak to the customer. And I think the technology is moving so quickly now that if you had asked me this question 2 years ago, I'd have a different answer than I have for you today, which is I think the way that people consume information online is going to change in such a dramatic way in the next 2 years that I think going and making big moves and spending $100,000 on a website that has a marketplace and, you can transact online, all those sort of things. I think that's going to be out of date by the time you get this thing in place. And you're not only going to lose the money, but you're going to lose the resources that you allocated to it internally during that period of time. I think my vision for what I think is in the future is audio. I think that I'm going to go to a website and and I'm going to be able to talk to somebody. It's going to be AI. I'm going to be able to ask them any questions I want. While I'm in the car, I can say, "Hey, can you check out what co-working spaces are in Toronto?" It's like, here's the options. Great. Can you drop me into one of the chats? Which ones have chat? All of them? Okay, great. Which one do you think would be the best for me and my use? This is what I'm like, and da da da. It already knows me. I don't have to tell it. So it says, yeah, hey Kane, here's what's going to be your best option. I'll drop you into the web chat, and you can chat with them, and then it'll be like, hello, this is so and so from IQ, and then I'm going to say, well, how much are your office spaces? What about this size? What about that size? Is that all in pricing? And then it will be trained to say things like, you haven't asked me about hidden costs. You haven't asked me about, and then it is going to, from our perspective, like on the provider side, I think what you're going to see is just massive amounts of data that you can optimize. That when I told them you don't know about hidden costs versus saying, have you thought about hidden costs? That has a 20% swing in conversion ratio, and you're going to optimize. And so I think that is so close. That is so close around the corner that I think we need to spend more of our time on other things that move the needle for our company and prepare for that to come and be ready for that, but not look at spending time developing technology, which may be outdated by the time it gets implemented.
So philosophically, it's aligned in that you're giving the consumer, or whether it's a broker or the end customer, more information, right? Where it's like, I want to be able to say, do you have something that's 8 people? Is it on that 18th floor? Or is it on whatever? And is that kind of where you're at? Like, maybe there's limits to that, but basically, would you allow them to kind of say, yeah, we've got 4 offices that fit your dimensions and your needs, and like, or would you kind of say, you know what, it sounds like you need to talk to a real human at this point? And I guess that's where the line I'm trying to figure out philosophically is.
That's diving into some detail, which I like. So I think you gotta have it as a choose your own adventure sort of experience. For me, I prioritize information over the human interaction as long as I can get the information. I don't care. I don't care if it's a person or if it's an AI bot giving me the information. I'm just looking for the information. It'd be nice to have a person, but it doesn't really matter that much. And the AI conversation is getting just so good. Like, it's so advanced, and it's getting better and better by the day. So I'd almost prefer to have an AI bot. It just sounds crazy, but I think if I was out there searching, like cars, I want to buy a new car, right? If I could call and I don't have to worry about hurting your feelings, I can just say, so like, how do you stack up? Like, here's another, do you think you could drop it by $5? Cause I'm getting a better lease rate over here. And I could I could just be very candid. And you might find that people become more candid because they're not talking to a human. They're not worried about their feelings. They're worried about what they're thinking about is, what do I need? What information do I need? And they're going to be very open about that. I mean, this is me talking about my own experience. This is me talking about how I would interact with the technology. It doesn't mean everybody interacts that way. And I try not to overlay my thoughts and experience on how other people might have a completely different relationship with AI and say they would never, ever want that. Right. But I think that it has to be an option. I think it's going to differentiate. I think AI is the absolute most important thing happening in business right now. And I think you are going to have very solid businesses that are very good at delivering the product and the services that they do and have been doing it for years and have great margins. And you will see all that erode if they are not taking advantage of AI, because the company that does is just going to eat their lunch. So it's coming. Whatever relationship you have with it, you kind of have to reconcile in some sort of way, because it's coming. And if you actively choose not to do it, it's here, and if you're actually choosing not to use it, that there's consequences of that.
Yeah,
I'm going to let Taylor, I could keep hitting you with questions. I'm going to let Taylor take over. Thank you for that. Lots to think on that. And we're going to talk more about AI, I think, if we have time. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I like that. I almost feel like a little guilty diverting the conversation away from that, because it is super interesting, and it is a really interesting business strategy discussion, and the human element of it too. But so my questions were more kind of focused around marketing and brand and positioning. And, I know you have a great team at IQ who supports you on that, and, would love to talk to them too. But, like
Mhm.
generally speaking, for IQ, you guys are probably more at the premium end of the market in terms of co-working. And if anybody's seen 302 Bay, which is the latest location, I believe, right? It's
Mhm.
absolutely
Yep.
incredible. So I was curious in terms of
Thank you.
positioning and in terms of, being on that more premium end of the market, is there anything that you guys are doing differently in your marketing based on that to kind of attract the right people? And I know, some of this might be through brokers. Like, are brokers, are they loving the premium brand, and are they finding that as being what their clients want? Like, is there anything you're doing differently in terms of marketing, being at that more premium position? And is there anything that you're kind of doing differently or avoiding to make sure that you're kind of, letting the maybe the wrong leads self-qualify that the space isn't for them? Like, how does that look in execution for you guys?
Yeah, so I can speak to it in two different ways. Number one, the branding and how we brand the brand, and then number two, the offering. So we've changed both. We've actively looked at changing
Yeah,
both of those things. Number one, we did this a while ago, but we got rid of, like, we don't have dedicated desks, we don't have hot desks, we don't have lounge passes, we don't have that within our spaces, and that was it was the decision was more than just the enterprise, because we made the decision before we had found out that it was mostly enterprise, even though we knew we had enterprise customers. What we did find, though, was that those were two very different customers. Someone who's coming in for a hot desk or
yeah,
dedicated desk was entirely different in terms of their value sets for what they saw workspace versus an enterprise company that's coming in taking down a 10 to 15, 20 person office. Just very,
yeah,
very different in what they were looking for. And they actually didn't interact very well. And like, so you could, like, you have to pick, you can't be everything to everyone. Right.
yeah,
So for us, we picked the enterprise customer and we said, that's what we want to focus on. So we removed that from the offering. So I think I liked that we did that, because it's like an action speaks louder than words, right? We had an opportunity for this revenue. We have let that revenue go because we want to focus on giving you a private office, private member, exclusive experience when you're at IQ.
yeah.
And we can't do that if we have these transient memberships where people are coming in like a revolving door. So, so that, I think, speaks to the market. And it's always something we talk about with the brokerage community and the customers, to talk about one of the differentiators for us. And I think it's something that most co-working companies have a difficulty letting that go, because it is revenue, and it's
Yeah.
hard to let that revenue go. And you have to look at it and say, well, if I just wipe that out, then how much more would I have to get per desk? And from our perspective, the way we looked at it is, if we wipe that out, is there price tolerance for what we need to get on a per desk basis? That's really the question. And like, so do we need to do it? And what we determined was that we could just charge a higher price on our desk and have it be more exclusive and invest more in what those customers wanted, and make sure that they get that experience that they want, versus them having experience where there is this transient membership that they don't necessarily resonate with.
Yeah, it's interesting. The
So
positioning of understanding who you're for as well as who you're not for, I feel like is something that maybe gets kind of neglected sometimes. Like, and it's almost, there's like an element of intestinal fortitude, if you will, in understanding who you're not for and then taking action to position for who you are for, even if it's at the expense of who maybe isn't the optimal customer for you guys.
yeah, once you understand the customer, there are so many opportunities to optimize for that customer. So as another example is, we stopped renting one person offices in our portfolio.
Oh yeah.
To like, if someone inquires and wants a one person office, we don't rent it to them. And that's a decision that we made, because we find that the person who's coming in for a one person office, again, isn't our core client, right? That's not our core
Yeah.
customer. So a couple of things. Number one, that customer wants something very different than the enterprise customer. So the way they interact with everything, the transaction process, the staff, like everything, because their value sets are so different, they they it's so difficult to serve two different customers. They're very price conscious. They take a long time to make a decision, even though it's a one person office. When they come into the office, they try to do as much as they can to like squeeze every dime out of whatever it is that they do. Because I always say, like, the smaller the requirement is, it gets closer to being lunch money. It gets closer to being that whatever they're paying on a monthly basis is not, it's not a line item for a budget where they know they have
Yeah.
to spend it. And here's what I have for my office space. And as long as I stay within that and I get good value, I'm happy. They're looking at it as, I could drive a Lexus or have this one person office. right? And then so they're always thinking about how do they get Alexa's worth of value out of this one person office, right? And like it's just the wrong things to focus on. I find like the smaller the companies, they just tend to more focus on things that aren't important, which is like what is important is your team wanting to come into the office every single day, you getting your work done, you not being distracted, you making sure that everything works. And if something doesn't work, you got someone that's going to take care of you and make sure that it does work, right? And is always thinking
Yeah.
about how to optimize your experience. So we took that out of the offering, and we do offer the one person offices, but we only offer it to our enterprise customers that are tacking on to larger offices. And in some cases, we'll offer a one person office to a brokerage relationship because it's a relationship.
Yeah.
And usually we talk to them just about like who that person is. So I only say that as just a example of once you understand who the core customer is, all of a sudden you start to notice all these things that you can do operationally to like, get your arms around what is really important to that customer. And so
Yeah.
that customer likes the idea that that office across the hall can be added to my office because it's getting crazy. And this one person like Kane is a loud talker and I need to get him out of my office. And you're telling me he could have a private office down the hall. Done. So this, these are the opportunities that we see as we spend more time doing this. And I would say that for the first 7 years of the business, we were very reactive. We were very like, who's your customer? Our customer is anybody who would pay. Right.
Yeah.
And, and is very reactive in terms of, well, here's who we have now. Right. But it wasn't as intentional as it is today, which is once our lead comes in, our sales team can tell you right away if they're our core customer, not core customer. Tell me yes or no. Everyone in our sales team can tell you that instantly. Probably everyone at our location team could tell you that instantly because we've
Yeah.
just so refined who our core customer is.
Well, I'm so curious too, like in terms of the repositioning of that, like it's one thing to make the decision that, okay, we're gonna cut these services because they don't align with our core customer. And then the second part of that equation, and the reason I got to this is because I was thinking like, okay, so you don't offer one person offices except for in this situation. It's easier to message that, that we don't offer dedicated desks to co-working anymore. We only offer private offices. And I was thinking like, it must get a little murkier in terms of like someone wants a one person office and the positioning around that. But I was curious, like, how did you guys approach the repositioning of the business? There's so many channels you have to be across. There's so many places that you have to articulate that positioning. Like, what did that look like internally? How big of a lift was that to kind of like reposition that and make sure that it was repositioned to the audience in the right way?
Yeah, so that goes to the branding, which is the second part of the question, which we've rolled out piece by piece, as opposed to saying
Yeah.
we are doing a complete rebranding. It's going to say enterprise everywhere, right? So instead of doing that, we looked at what were the easy ways for us to communicate this quickly, and the first way is one on one. When we're talking with the brokers, when we're talking with the customer, and we're designing our sales process, making sure that we communicate that when they come in. Then from there, we look at our collateral that is going out on a cadence, right? And then from there to
Yeah.
the website. And so one of the challenges about anything when you try to make a change in a business is sometimes it can seem so big that it just doesn't happen. Right. So don't let like perfection be the enemy of progress. Right. We've decided this is who we are. And instead of us spending 6 months to plan changing this messaging, let's go and change it easily where we can right now. Let's do it right now because we believe in this and we're convicted. Or like we have conviction. Sorry, not convicted. I don't know if that's the word. We have conviction.
Yeah.
We have conviction. We have conviction around that, right? So we want to. So and everybody agrees. So like let's get that messaging out there as soon as we can in a way that is the least amount of disruption, right? And then from there go to the other different channels, and that are just a little bit more static. It takes a little bit more time to make changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that brand note too, I guess like I'm always curious. You've scaled to 8 locations and counting, and there's more coming. From how it sounds, how have you kind of handled that massive task of keeping brand and experience consistency for IQ across the locations, across your marketing? Like, it's a lot to take on to keep the consistency across the board. So how do you guys approach doing that, making sure that it's consistent as an IQ brand, but also maybe how do you market the individual locations and let them have their own shine? Like, is there a balance there in terms of how you've scaled that, how you've kept that, and how you focus on brand versus locations?
Yeah. So we've centralized the function of marketing. We have Caroline, who's our director of sales and marketing, and then she has a marketing team. So she has two people on her marketing team that assist her on the marketing side specifically. She does sales and marketing, so she gets to see both. So we have guidelines around what things need to look like when they go out, so it can reach a certain standard and make sure that there's consistency. So whether you're a broker, whether you're a prospect, or whether you're a member or an IQ staff member, like you're going to see consistency in what it is that we do. So we essentially have like brand guidelines on what we do, and we try to make every location and give every location certainly the freedom to be in real time with the marketing that we do. And we have great happy hours and these great things that happen within our industry, where you just get to know so many people and have the great pleasure of like doing something special for so many people. And so we like to really capture those moments as best we can, but we do it within like marketing guidelines, so that we know that if you take a picture, it should look like this. If it's, so all of these things to give guidance to the on-site team, so when they're collaborating and when we're putting content together, that there's consistency with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and then so I guess this kind of like, I don't want to sound like a corny question, but I'm always curious. Like you've been doing this for 10, 12 years now. And over time, obviously there's been learnings in terms of marketing, in terms of positioning. And I assume maybe the kind of like refocusing on who the core customer is probably going to be a big part of this answer. But like, is there anything that you look back on the decade plus that you've been doing this and you're like, "Ah, I wish I'd known that sooner in terms of marketing, in terms of positioning? And if so, how would things maybe have been different now if you'd known that back then?" And again, I don't want to lead the witness with the positioning and the core customer thing, but I feel like that might be part of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So the core customer is kind of the obvious answer to that one. A less obvious answer would be like really looking at where all of your leads are coming from, and consistently optimizing that for what's working and what's not working, and using data as much as possible. It's really easy to get dragged into the day to day of running a business where you just don't look at the data, and data is such a tough, like it's such a tough thing because it's so powerful. Data is so powerful, but it can also be it can lead you in the wrong direction, and it can also be useless, right? Like it's like there's so much to it. You need just enough information that you can act on it, but not so much information that you just like, you get the report and you look at it and it looks like a Wordle or something, and you're like, forget it, I have no time for this, right? So you want something that like you can digest it like really easy, right? And you are able to action it and then dig further. So like we talked about this, Kevin, before, David Lee Roth and the M&Ms, right? So
Mhm.
the whole story about David Lee Roth, he used to, before he had his rules before Van Halen would play at a concert, right? And he said that you have to
Hmm.
remove all of the brown M&Ms you have to give me a bowl of M&Ms. It has to be this big, and you have to remove all the brown M&Ms. And if he came on site and he would look through this bowl for the brown M&Ms, if there's brown M&Ms, he would lose it, right? And he said the reason why was because if they can't follow that direction, then what other direction's not followed, right? And they talked about the situation where, and he learned that because they had a situation at one of the concerts where the whole venue fell down, right? Like as a result of it not being put together properly, and it sunk into
Wow.
the basketball court because of the weight. Anyway, that's like a long story. You can look that up on YouTube. It's
Yeah.
very interesting. But the brown M&Ms is kind of what I'm looking for, right? So when you look at data, I always think about it like, what is the brown M&M? What is it that's going to tell me there's something wrong that I need to look deeper,
Yeah.
without me getting like drowning in information, right? So I would say that if you looked at what do I wish I had done better, I
Yeah.
would say that I wish I had built up a real discipline around data right from the start, where I was really digging into who is my customer. So it wasn't a surprise to me that 82% of our desks were occupied by enterprise companies, because I would have been following that all along the process, and I would have, instead of realizing this one day, I would have saw the shift coming. I would have saw it
Yeah.
earlier, because I would have said, okay, I'm going to do this research. I really want to find out who the customer is. Oh, I got this one company in, maybe our first enterprise company, right, came in. And then I started to realize that there was some commonalities between why they made the decision to come with us and other ones did, right? And then so
Yeah.
over time, we'd be able to react in lockstep with our customers and with what's happening, right? As opposed
Yeah.
to having it something be a revelation. Really, if with good data, nothing should be a revelation. Things should be course corrections all the time, right?
Yeah. Less big aha moments and more minor adjustments that keep things on track.
Ideally, if everything's moving well, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I had one last question here for you, and I want to kick it back to Kev because I feel like you were kind of on something with the AI topic, and there's something to be rounded out there. So I don't want to take too much time away from that. But I'm curious, just in terms of in terms of the way the marketing shifting, the internet shifting, the way people consume information is shifting, and like the reflection of you as the CEO on a brand. Obviously, you do a ton in terms of podcasts. You do a ton in terms of speaking engagements, panels, all kinds of stuff, and like you've kind of built a personal brand. I don't, and I'm not sure if it was intentional or if it just happened over time based on your position in the industry and your passion about the industry. But like building a personal brand, was that something that you set out to do intentionally? Is it something that happened? And what impact has that had on the business? Like, do you think that you having a profile has, tertiary benefits to to IQ as a business? And Kev's laughing at me because I'm doing a word
I'm
salad
always
too.
laughing at you. No, you're good.
Kev
So
gets
that's a
the
great question. That's a great question. So I would say the answer to it, in terms of being intentional, no, it was never intentional. It was never intentional. Like when I was asked to be a president of the GWA, I recognized that could like help elevate me as a person in the industry, as for someone known, to be in the industry. But in terms of like growing a brand and, around co-working, I see kind of the residual, but it's always been in hindsight, because
yeah,
being in the industry, being around the people that are in the industry is something that I just truly love and enjoy. And there's so many amazing people in this industry that are so generous with their time that like I try to be as generous as them. Like I try to be a good citizen within the community of co-working, because people have taken so much time to help me miss potholes and not do the right
yeah,
and do like I could have done something and gone down this road, but they've already done it and they took the time to explain why it didn't work, right? Or something
yeah,
that I should be doing. They've taken the time to say, here's why you should, and let me show you how. And it's just it's like an industry that I came from real estate. In real estate, everyone says they're doing great, but never tells you what they're working on. So it's very challenging, right? And they're not deep. I find a lot of times they're not deep relationships if they're not outside of work. Whereas I find with co-working inside the industry, talking very specifically about all the things that you're working through, all the challenges around starting the business. COVID was excruciating. There was so many things that were so challenging, and the network that I have, the support system that I have through all the people that care about me, that I care about, is just it's something that I value so much. And it's kind of like as a side of that, or is that people get to know you because now you go to all the things to be with all those people, and now you're getting more people that you meet who are also great people that some that now I want to help, who maybe are in those early phases, and if I can depart my knowledge and help them the way people have helped me, that would really there's a lot of personal satisfaction in that for me. So that's where these it's just something, it's like a byproduct. And now I do think there's opportunities from the marketing and PR side and those sort of things, and we do think about that, especially with enterprise companies, because sometimes they're looking for that. Sometimes that's important to them. So
yeah.
it's good that we take positions on things. It's good that we take the time to educate. And I think a lot of times the people in the community, as well as people in real estate, appreciate that we take time to sit down and talk with them about these things and be open and transparent.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, with the business being so focused on brokers these days, and the amount of importance that IQ puts on brokers, I'm sure there's a component here of you having been a broker, and there's a mutual trust there. But do you find that there's any element of your accessibility and your thoughts being out there, your expertise being very public, that when it comes to those broker relationships, does IQ get a better kind of leg up, maybe because of that expertise of yours being so prevalent and available to them?
I think so. I hope so. I try to go to as many broker events as I can. I try to get
Yeah,
involved as much as I can to show that like I care about this. This is something personal to me. It's not something where it's just we have someone working on it and they're going to do it, and I'm going to not going to pay attention to it. It's like those relationships really matter. I mean, relationships are everything, right? And so the relationships with the
yeah,
brokers really matter. The relationships with our members really matter. Relationships with our team really matters. So I try as best I can to do that. And I think if they see you more publicly, then they may come across you before you've met them. And that's a great opportunity because they're like, oh, I've heard of IQ. Oh, I know kind of what you guys do. I've been through your space, that sort of thing. So it helps. We've already kind of we can already create a connection fairly quickly because they've already been in touch with the brand and in touch with the product.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we're kind of at 59 minutes here, Kev. Do you want to touch on the AI and tech stuff we were talking about before?
I'm gonna borrow one like 30-second more from you, Kane. So one recommendation: read a book called Key Person of Influence. It's great. If you haven't read it, it's right up your alley. It's things you're already doing instantly already, but it's just going to give words to what you're already doing instinctively. So Key Person of Influence, I've read it back to back. Literally, I stopped the first listen to it, then did it again. So that's your little exchange here for
Amazing.
He also tried reading it back to front, but that didn't work as well.
That didn't work as well.
He was just as successful with that. Before as we wrap up here, is there one tool? I wanted to spend more time on AI, but is there one tool, technology, or thing that has had disproportionate results for you recently? Like maybe your contact enrichment or an AI, like maybe it's Claude, maybe it's something, or maybe it's a chat widget. Like, is there any kind of one singular tool or technology that you're finding great results in, excited about, or that you would recommend to people, and then we'll send you on your way?
Sure. Yeah. Claude. Like Claude over ChatGPT, I find the results are much better. Cowork is amazing. The plugin for Excel, if you haven't used it, it is wicked. So like I've created full spreadsheets, full technical analysis without touching the spreadsheet itself, just putting in command prompts on the side and say like, please do this, please do that, please make it so that I can change this and toggle it, and changes the whole thing. And just like literally like, and I'm sure there's probably a way I could even talk to it and ask it to do these things. And it builds this beautiful presentation, like financial presentation, that would take me hours to do, and it wouldn't look half as good. So it saves you so much time.
Yeah, Claude Coworks. We're deep down that rabbit hole. I literally cannot learn it and apply it as fast as I want to. So I'm with you on that. Anyone listening to this, go check out Claude, the Cowork feature in particular, aptly named for this conversation. Kane, thank you so much for your time. To learn more about you, I guess people could connect with you on LinkedIn, Kane Willmott, or find your website, iqoffices.com. Is there anywhere else we should let people know about, or is that the best starting point for people?
That's the best starting point. Yeah. Most of my stuff's on LinkedIn. I try to do my best to pay attention to it and make sure I'm on top of it in terms of messages and that sort of thing. So if people reach out, be happy to help out in any way that we can. Also like to close out by saying, I've worked with both you guys, and it's been nothing but a joy. It really has. Like, you're both super professional, highly knowledgeable. I love that you have both chosen to focus on this industry, which is amazing, because there's a lot of people that just try to, do every industry sort of thing. And I think that this is something that the industry needs. Not a lot of people do it. And I love how you both are like work towards things in somewhat of an agnostic way, right? Like, you're always looking for, hey, what is the best result that we can get, regardless of where we need to plug in, who we need to do this, like what kind of team do we need to surround ourselves with in order to get access to the information we need, or the expertise that we need. And I think that's hugely helpful. And I know that, like, Kevin, you were very early days with me, and we did a lot of amazing things together, which I'm very, very grateful for. And then Taylor, we've done some really good, some content together as well, which has been awesome. And I love the way that I don't have to explain what the industry is and what we're trying to achieve. You're ahead of it. You're thinking about the things that I'm not thinking about, because you're focusing on it every day. So that's amazing as well. So I appreciate you guys having me on today. This is a lot of fun. Always great chatting.
Thanks for joining us. This was awesome.
And we owe you a debt of gratitude. You're literally feeding families here, many of them, but including ours, at least by opening doors for us. So we really appreciate your kind words as well there. Thank you.
Yeah, I wouldn't be in this industry if it wasn't for you guys, by the way. The two of you collectively are responsible for this. So
You're welcome,
that.
And we apologize. And,
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, sorry about that.
It's been a net positive, and I get to hang out with guys like you, so it all works out.
That's great. Well, that's great to hear.
Yeah. Kane, thanks again. We want to be respectful of your time. Really appreciate it. And maybe we'll definitely love to get you on at some point again, maybe next year, see how things have changed since we chatted.
So, sounds like a plan. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Bye. Thank you.
All right. Bye for now.
All right.